Okay, so good morning to everybody. And we continue with our course, Pharmacology and Physiology of Neuropsychiatric Disorders. And today we will talk about monoamines. To be more precise, we will talk about interaction between monoamines and monoamines and amino-acid neurotransmitter. We started to speak last time about amino acid neurotransmitter. And we learned there are two actually amino acid neurotransmitter. It's a glutamate or gamma aminobutyric acid or GABA. And both of them synthesized in glia cells from glutamic acid. What we spoke even in the past, we already spoke about receptors to monoamine neurotransmitter. And we spoke that there are three types, there are two categories of glutamate receptors. One category is ionotropic, and second category is metabotropic. Who remember what's the difference between ionotropic and metabotropic receptor? Excuse me? Yes, ionotropic receptor is the same molecule. Receptor is actually the same molecule with the ion channel, and when ligand is connected to the receptor, it's changing conformation. It's get open to the specific ions. And metabotropic receptor, it's connected to some kind of signaling cascade. And when you activate it, it activates second messengers, and second messenger can, in the end, activate or deactivate ion channels. And in the case with glutamate, we have three types of ionotropic receptors. It's AMPA, kainate, and NMDA. All three of them, they are connected. They are natrium and they are sodium and calcium channels. And ionotropic receptors, there are 8 families of metabotropic glutamate receptors, all of them connected to different type of G proteins, and their activation also leads to the influx of calcium to the cell, but from the endoplasmatic reticulum. And then, as we can see, because all glutamate receptors activation results in influx of sodium and calcium, we can be sure that all of them are excitatory receptors. This is how work metabotropic glutamate receptor. All of them, they are linked to GQ protein, and GQ protein activate adenylin class. It's activate phospholipase C. Phospholipase synthesized inositol-3-phosphate, which activate IP3 channels in the plasmatic reticulum, and then we get same result like with the metabotropic receptor, but more slow. We get influx of calcium to the neuron. GABA receptors, they also have two categories. GABA A receptors, they are ionotropic, and they consist of 5 subunits. We will see later why it's important for us, subunits of GABA receptor, and activation of GABA receptor by GABA results in the opening and entrance of chloride neurons to the cell. And entrance of chloride neurons, it goes inside, it's negatively charged. We have inhibition of the decrease of the membrane potential. Metabotropic GABA receptors, they link to G-alpha I protein, as we saw before with the serotonin for 5-HT1A receptors. Beta gamma subunit of this protein activate potassium channels and deactivate calcium channels. And activation of potassium channels, deactivation of calcium channels, both results in inhibition. And we see something pretty very general pattern. All GABA, all glutamate neurons, so far without exception, at least in the harder vertebrates, all glutamate neurons, all glutamate receptors are excitatory, and all GABA, all receptors to GABA are inhibitory. And when it was discovered, it was very big enthusiasm about it. It started to be clear something like 100 years ago, and neuroscientists get extremely enthusiastic. See, we see that the brain, like binary machine, it works on balance of excitation and inhibition. It's yin and yang from the Oriental philosophy. And we human beings like to see and to analyze words in that binary terms. Left and right, right and wrong, good and evil. And who knows, maybe we analyze words, maybe we see words this way because our central nervous system is actually binary and consists of excitatory and inhibitory patterns. It was also an attempt when this binary excitatory inhibitory function of the brain become clear. It was also an attempt to see the health and disease on the central nervous system also in the terms of balance between excitation and inhibition. Like in the healthy brain, glutamatergic excitation and GABA inhibition are balanced. When you have when you have too much glutamate, too much excitation, you have disorders like epilepsy, mania, insomnia, or positive symptoms of schizophrenia. And when you have hyperinhibitory, hyperglutamatergic condition, it's condition like coma, depression, hypersomnia, fatigue, or negative symptoms of schizophrenia. Of course, it's very simplified picture, but there is some rationale in this model. For example, mania, you will be surprised, manic phase of bipolar during the bipolar episode is actually pretty similar to, in terms of the brain activity, is pretty similar to epilepsy. Some patients with mania during the hypermanic episodes, the EEG show classical epileptic waves. I will not speak about, as I talked about GABA and glutamate in general. They are specialists in amino acids, monoamine. They can do it much better than I. I am monoamine physiologist and pharmacologist. I will speak more about GABA and glutamate in terms of how they interact with monoamines. We will have today class, we will have two sections. First section will be about GABA, second about glutamate, and in GABA we will discuss in this order. We will speak about GABA or acting drugs. We will speak GABA monoamine interaction in the end, putative mechanism which mediates this interaction. Okay, before I open next slide, who was the first historic GABA drug? Somebody asked me already this question. Is the oldest historically known compound which acts on GABA system. Exactly, you told it last time. GABA system is a system which historically the human beings learned to manipulate on this system first in history, before all other systems of the brain. I'm almost sure about it. Alcohol is very known and has become very important part of human culture, at least for 10,000 and more years. There are two alcoholic products known historically. First, it was beer and wine. Beer is prepared from grains and wine from grapes. Wine-like products can be prepared from other fruits, but grain is a more common product to prepare alcohol. And you can see beer was known for at least for 5,000 years. Beers was known in Egypt and Mesopotamia. It's more likely that Egyptian beer was light beer because main grains in Egypt it was wheat. It was wheats, and Mesopotamia main product was rice. The beer was the. So I noticed that human beings also divided more to Mesopotamian and Egyptian. I'm, for example, clearly Mesopotamian. I always prefer dark beer if there is a choice, but more people I noticed prefer light one. And the oldest remaining of the beer were in Israel, in one, I forget the name of the caves in the Carmel. It's the 30,000, 13th millennium BC. And wine known at least from Iran, it's known from 7 millennium BC. And from Greece, from Caucasus, 6 millennium. And to our area, wine came about a little bit late, about 1,500 years ago. With all other drugs, probably it's historical. Probably alcoholic products were known even before this. You know that in English language, the word spirit has two meanings. One is a supernatural spiritual being, non-material beings, and the second is alcohol drinks. Are in German the same, for example, or not? No, it's only in English. It survived. And there is also from the Middle East, the Arab legends about jinn. It's also very strong supramaterial being. Usually it's found locked in the bottle, which I think is not coincidence. And this is still remaining from prehistoric time, which when predominant way of thinking was animistic way of thinking, that not only human beings, but plants and animals and even all objects, they have kind of spirit. It was believed that grains and grapes, they have very strong spirit inside, that if you release it, if you know to release it, you can use this strong spirit. As usual, like with alcohol, problems started when humans learned to distillate alcohol. Natural, like like in beer and wine, which can be maximum strong, a little bit above 10%, is probably not sufficient to induce addiction and strong problems. We don't have your healer, but healer exactly working on this problem. He could explain us better than me why strong alcohol. They found it in their animal model that only strong alcohol they can induce compulsive drinking, but not diluted alcohol. So, the distillation of alcohol, it's probably was known in ancient Egypt, but then it was lost. It was reintroduced in Europe in later Middle Age, early modern time Europe. And when we get distillated alcohol, which acts as an allosteric modulator of GABA receptors, it's built to gamma to beta subunit, when GABA itself built to alpha beta subunit. But alcohol increased sensitivity of GABA receptors to GABA. And we start to have very big problems with alcohol and alcohol abuse when distillated drugs mostly get introduced. This, as we see, this alcohol use disorder mortality per million, which in some countries it's reach really and dangerous numbers. Our area was not only probably not the first to with kept record of alcohol production, but we see first regulation of alcohol intake in the Hebrew Bible. It was not total prohibition like in Islam, but it was people were encouraged to get Nazirite vow and to abstain from alcohol. At first, I think recorded attempt of governmental regulation. Now alcohol intake regulated to some degree everywhere. In some countries it's prohibited, but in most countries it's regulated by alcohol by drinking age, which is higher than majority age. But it's a very controversial topic because alcohol regulation has very strong connection with culture and religion. The only countries now who prohibit alcohol, they are Muslim countries. It used to be prohibited to some degrees in some non-Muslim countries. In United States, like everybody know, in Russia, Russian Empire before Revolution Russia, it was also attempt during the First World War. It was an attempt to prohibit alcohol, and it was done in a very smart way. It was not totally prohibited by strong alcohol like vodka and brandy could be served only in restaurants, not in shops or not consumed at home. But you see now also that countries which are mostly countries with usually Protestant backgrounds, they also usually more strict about alcohol. They increase drinking age. In Canada, it's increased to 25 in many of the provinces. Problem still resulted, and probably even in the countries with a total prohibition of alcohol, we still see alcohol use disorder. This fellow, which you see, is David Nutt. David Nutt is a very prominent neuroscientist, addiction neuroscientist. I had a privilege to meet him in the conference. I was even guest in his lab in the Imperial College London. And for several years, he served as an advisor for British government for addictive substances. And he once, a couple of times, he said in TV interviews that alcohol is much more dangerous than many prohibited drugs. And he was forced to resign because of this statement, but he was absolutely right.
What happened in Paraguay out of all the South American countries?
Well, to be honest, I don't know. Maybe yes.
But I know there is a very high degree of alcohol abuse in South American and Native American communities, but it's interesting that Paraguay, out of all the other countries,
The increased drinking age, maybe because of big German community. I say that it's a cultural. Catholic countries usually less. For example, in Germany itself, it's a mere depends on the federal state. No.
We're very liberal with alcohol. I drinking at age of 16.
It used to be in Netherlands. In Netherlands used to be, I think they increased everything to 18 recently. In Netherlands, it used to be non-distillated 16 and distillated 18. Beer? No, I'm not sure. I think it's urban legends. Well, yeah. Okay, till now about alcohol. I want to add slide about alcohol and depression. I forget to add it. I will tell it verbally without slide. Alcohol actually, most of the people experienced it. We have when we extremely sad and disappointed, it's one of the stimuli to drink. Acute intake of alcohol may indeed act as an antidepressant. You feel less mental pain, you feel less anxious in this moment. But hangover, poisoning by alcohol, it's vice versa. It's very strong depressant. Actually, psychological feeling during the hangover is very similar to depression. It's a sadness, low self-esteem, feeling of guilt. It's very common in hangover. And alcohol and depression is very different, very dangerous combination because many of the depression-related suicides were committed under alcohol influence. So alcohol is, I will call it a zero generation GABA drug. And what's the next, the first generation GABA drug? It's barbiturates. Barbiturates, they were synthesized by German scientist Adolf von Baeyer. He, with a colleague, synthesized it with malonic acid and uric acid, and you get this barbituric acid. There's several legends why it's called barbituric acid. Somebody heard this legend? Was in 1864, von Bayer with his colleagues, they successfully synthesized this new acid, and they went to celebrate to the local pub. And but by coincidence, it was Santa Barbara Day, 4th of December. And Santa Barbara, she is a protector of the artillery. And artillery officers were celebrated in the same pub. And one of the artillery officers asked him what they are celebrating. They asked him that they get new chemical compound. And he, do you mind me to give name? And he was named barbituric because Santa Barbara Day is synthesized from the uric acid. It's one of the legends why it gets this pretty weird name, which is not related to this chemical structure. In 1903, it started to be clinically used. Two scientists, again, German scientists, Emil Fischer and Josef von Mering, they worked for Bayer, which is still known pharmaceutical company. It's not connected to Bayer pharmaceutical company. It's from the name of the owner, but it's different Bayer. It's different from different family. It's not connected to Adolf von Bayer. And first barbiturate, which was synthesized, was commercially produced and clinically and veterinary used, it was named barbital, or because it's synthesized from barbituric acid, or veronal. And why it was veronal? Because these two guys, they liked very much Verona in Italy. They see that the more peaceful and quiet city that they know, the best place for vacation. And because of tranquility and quietness of Verona, they called barbital, which was tranquilizer. They call it veronal. And veronal was used, started to be used in clinics as a sedative, tranquilizer sedative, and to get better sleep. And veterinary use was not very sad use. It's animal euthanasia, and it's very sad, very sad irony that first use of barbiturates was euthanasia, and the last remaining use of barbiturates, which we have today, it's also they remained only for euthanasia. And barbiturates, they act as a, what's very interesting about barbiturates, they act in low doses, they act as a allosteric modulators. They build on alpha-beta subunit, but in different ways than GABA. And like alcohol, it's increase the sensitivity of the receptor to GABA. But in high concentration start to be allosteric modulator antagonist, which creates which what explained by this so strong and because it's so dangerous. Barbiturates, they can be from pharmacological point of view, they can be divided to short-acting, medium-acting, and long-acting. It depends on the half lifetime. The shortest half lifetime barbiturates like sodium thiopental, they were used in a general anesthesia. In general anesthesia, it's good to use a drug fast acting. You fastly induce anesthesia, and when you stop to apply it IV, then after the surgery, the patient can quickly wake up. It's still used in anesthesia, but it's dropping down. In other use of thiopental, it was unfortunately used for violation of human rights. It was used for interrogation. It was so-called true serum, because it's entered to the interrogated person to the become very sedated and has less power to control what he speaks about. Medium acting, like pentobarbital, they were mostly used for treat insomnia, to induce good sleep, and long-acting antidepressants like phenobarbital, they were used as anticonvulsant, and they still used in severe cases of epilepsy when you cannot achieve the result with a less aggressive means of treatment. What's the problem with barbiturates? There's three main problems. First one is a tolerance with the barbiturates, and we will see later with all GABA acid drugs. We need higher and higher dose to achieve the same results. You started to treat patients with 10 milligrams, soon he will need 20 milligrams and higher. It's great addiction. Somebody get used to barbiturates, will demand barbiturates, even if he does not need it medically. And overdose of barbiturates is very dangerous, because from relatively small overdose, human beings or animals, they stop breathing, and with a higher dose, it's even shut off the cardiac activity, and it's induced pain. Yes. Definitely, it's probably desensitization of the receptors. And overdose of barbiturate is very dangerous, because if it comes to the cardiac arrest, you can't do anything anymore, and there is no antidote. There is no, as far as I know, there is no GABA antagonist which you can use to wash out barbiturates. But this, it's first it's put to coma, then patients, then human being or animal stop breathing. No, in much lower doses can suppress breathing and cardiac activity and heart activity. But this is the reason why it's used to euthanize animals, because it's a substance which, with a relatively small dose, you can induce very fast and painless death, and it's also used for assisted suicide in the countries where it's legal. It's also used, I do not want to speak about it, but it's also in some jurisdictions, United States, which it's also used for lethal injection, barbiturates. It's a very big, because no pharmaceutical company wants to sell it. To provide their compounds for performance of death penalty, because then medical association can boycott this company. So usually we not know that much about it, but in many jurisdictions, indeed, when barbiturates used by the barbiturate create very strong addiction, and a person who addicted to barbiturate really start to mentally and physically deteriorate. It's happened with one of the last Soviet Union leaders, with Leonid Brezhnev. He became He was offered barbiturates as a treatment because he complained about lack of good sleep, and he became very strong barbiturate addict. And barbiturates they kept now replaced. For anesthesia, they replaced with a ketamine and recently more with a propofol. We will speak about it. Is the anticonvulsant and as a sedative. It was replaced with benzodiazepines. And also insomnia and anxiety, now it seems it's become clear that it is better to treat with antidepressant, atypical antipsychotics, and with melatonin or with 5-HT2C antagonist. Okay, then second generation of GABA drugs, which is still widely used, they are benzodiazepines. Benzodiazepines, they were first and many later benzodiazepines were discovered by Leo Sternbach, who was Polish-American Jewish scientist working for Roche, Hoffman LaRoche. In 1955, he discovered chlordiazepoxide. Later, he discovered and write patent to several other benzodiazepines. It's same as barbiturates. Benzodiazepines also, we can pharmacology divide them to the short, medium, and long-acting. Short-acting like triazolam, they used in panic disorder. When somebody feel panic attack, it's better to take very short-acting drug to take it over and then not to be dizzy and sedated later. Lorazepam used for insomnia. Lorivan clonazepam as a long-acting is widely used as to treat epilepsy, to prevent epileptic episode in epileptic patients. Benzodiazepines, they again act as allosteric modulators. They have another binding site in alpha and gamma subunit of the GABA neurons. But unfortunately, with benzodiazepines, we have almost the same problems like with barbiturates. It's also show very high tolerance. Patients who take benzodiazepines for insomnia really need to increase the dosage. Also, people become very addicted. And because benzodiazepines, they are not, they slightly, especially in Israel, they very slightly regulate. In Europe, United States, media committee a little bit more strong about benzodiazepines. For example, in Israel, they very easily prescribed. Many people, especially elderly people, they regularly take benzodiazepines, and we really don't know how many people are addicted to benzodiazepines because many people and their doctors don't consider it addiction. But people really live with the benzodiazepines all the life. Fortunately, overdose much more less risky because of their mechanism of different affinity. It's very hard, especially for young and healthy person. It's very hard to die from benzodiazepines overdose. Some people try to commit suicide with benzodiazepines. Usually they just sleep 2-3 days. Usually they wake up with overfull bladder after 1-2 days of continuous sleep, and then they went back to sleep again. And but benzodiazepines still can be very dangerous, especially, for example, in combination with alcohol. In some persons suffering from alcoholism, it's a way of potentiated prolonged effect of alcohol to take alcohol together, especially with long-acting with the clonazepam. And it's very dangerous and unfortunately results in lethal cases on a regular basis.
Why?
Well, because you touch allosteric sites, two different, one with alcohol, one with barbiturate, one with benzodiazepines, and then you have much stronger effect.
But if you take a lot of benzos,
Less. It's still dangerous,
I'm sure.
but less dangerous than alcohol. Alcohol much more dangerous because alcohol can kill you without any other drugs together. And the third generation of drugs, which are introduced right and started to be in the last 20 years. They called non-benzodiazepines. I think not very creative. Benzodiazepines and non-benzodiazepines. It's why maybe scientists stop to go to the pubs and to celebrate with artillery officers. The names will be more funny and more creative. They also called that drugs, which I would not recommend to use this term now. And you see they're a little bit similar to the benzodiazepines. They also treat, they have three cycles, three aromatic cycles. They're supposed to be more safe and less addictive, but still not enough data to speak about it. And other GABA ligands, which are medically used as propofol, which I reminded. Propofol is also allosteric modulator of GABA ligands. Propofol is considered to be very safe for general anesthesia. I think it's more common, it's a first choice drug now in general anesthesia and almost totally replaced barbiturates in anesthesia. It looks like milk, white substance. But when it's used with other substances, with other GABA ligands, for example, usage of, well, no one will use alcohol with a propofol, but for example, co-usage of benzodiazepines with alcohol, with propofol can be very deadly. And one most famous person to die from this combination is Michael Jackson. He is very sad. He was still very young. He was still very active. And as many people in the media, he had very big stress, very big problems with the sleeping. And he used benzodiazepines, like most of the people at that time, to get better sleep. And his personal physician also introduced to him propofol infusion. This is prohibited to do it at home. It should be done only in hospital. And once he already took benzodiazepines, and he still could not fall asleep, and he begged his doctor to infuse him propofol. Doctor understood that risk initially refused, but then he convinced him to do it, and unfortunately he died from this combination. It means that GABA drugs are effective, we need them, but all of them, they're dangerous, and especially dangerous when you activate two or more allosteric sites of this GABA receptor at the same time. But now finally, let's go back to our monoamines and we will ask a question. That antidepressant drugs like SSRIs and GABA ligands like benzodiazepines, we both use them in patients with anxiety. And how do you think they interact? Somebody has idea what will be how anti-GABA will affect of SSRI?
Probably amplifying the effect.
Probably, sorry.
Gonna be, but there might be an inverse reaction. They cause the steroid to act less.
Very good. We checked it. I had a privilege to check it. I worked at that time in the Brains Online in Netherlands. It's a contract research organization. Now it was purchased later by Charles Rivers. very big international contract research company. And we checked, we published this in 2010, and we tried to check how benzodiazepines modulate the effect of SSRIs in laboratory animals. We use one SSRI paroxetine. It was still widely used at that time. Today we probably will choose citalopram, and we choose two drugs, two benzodiazepines, oxazepam and temazepam. And we checked in hippocampus how is the effect of the serotonin release in the hippocampus of guanea pigs. Don't ask me why oxazepam and temazepam, why guanea pigs. We work, it was contract research organization, we work by request of one of the companies. I even don't know which company it was not my level to know which company requested. And they requested to do it in these animals and with these drugs. And we saw something very interesting. You see, this is extracellular levels of serotonin. After injection, first we give injection of oxazepam or temazepam, and 1 hour later, paroxetine. Which method it was? Somebody who can tell me? To measure extracellular levels of neurotransmitter. Exactly, thank you. It was indeed microdialysis. As usual, after paroxetine, we have increase in the extracellular serotonin. It's normally because paroxetine is a reuptake inhibitor. But when we pre-treat animals with benzodiazepine 1 hour before, it was 2 times less efficient, the effect of SSRIs. And this is something very interesting. When we published this paper, we were thinking that it will be very published, because it's very actual topic, because many patients with depression and anxiety, they take together SSRIs and benzodiazepines. But it's one of my, and it was published in Good Journal, but it's one of my less cited papers. So it's kind of a Pandora box which no one probably want to touch, this drug combination. I don't say the patients with depression should not take benzodiazepines and SSRIs. I was not clinician. I cannot come and tell that this combination should be not used. But I can only tell this combination should be treated very carefully, and the effect of the SSRIs, probably dose of SSRI should be increased if patient got treated with benzodiazepines. It was another work from the same laboratory by my colleagues, Thomas Kremers. He treated another compound. It's called paclofen. And paclofen it's not an agonist, it's antagonist. It's a blocker, and not of GABA A, but of GABA B receptors. And he shows the opposite effect. It's potentiated the effect when you give to animal to rats, this can be rats, when you give together citalopram and paclofen, we get increase. It's potentiated almost 3 times potentiated the effect of SSRIs. They went further and investigated how it works, the effect. And they saw that effect of, first of all, the effect of paclofen that you just saw is very similar to the effect of SB2420484. This compound we already saw in our previous classes. It's an antagonist of 5-HT2C serotonergic receptors. And also what they found that this antagonist of 5-HT2C receptors decrease the level of GABA. Also, decrease the level of GABA also is measured by by microdialysis. In the last class, we saw briefly that there are GABA interneurons in the dorsal raphe nuclei. And probably the mechanism is as follows. Serotonin activate, when you get activation of serotonin neurons, it's activate GABA neurons via 5-HT2C receptor. And GABA neurons is a negative feedback loop. GABA neurons, they inhibit 5-HT neurons via GABA-B receptors. And this self-inhibitory loop can be used, potentially technically used, to improve the effect of SSRIs. Another potential mechanism is inhibitory loop, which involves prefrontal cortex. It's a pretty complex circuits. We know that raphe nucleus neurons, they project to prefrontal cortex. And in prefrontal cortex, they activate 5-HT1A receptors on pyramidal neurons, which are inhibitory neurons. And pyramidal neurons, they project to the raphe nucleus and they activate serotonergic nucleus on the raphe. And if you inhibit activation, finally you get self-inhibition. It's another negative control loop of serotonergic neurons. And another loop involves fast spiking interneurons in the cortex, which are GABA interneurons. Again, they inhibited by 5-HT1A. And they, as a result, this disinhibit cortical neurons. Okay?
No.
No. Okay, there is a paper uploaded. That's one. So who wants to get deeper? Let's go. We also know that GABA neurons, GABA interneurons, that they also very important for serotonin, noradrenaline, and serotonin dopamine interaction. You remember from the last class. But we'll not talk about it. Also because I'm not sure that something is known about it. Also because of our time is limited. But somebody who wants to go to this topic, invited to do it. Somebody who wants to do this topic, role of GABA in interaction between the serotonin and noradrenaline, or role of GABA in interaction between serotonin and dopamine, you're welcome to choose it as a final work. Yes, this topic. Let's go to now to speak about, in the remaining time, to speak about glutamate. Glutamatergic, we will speak about glutamatergic drugs with antidepressant effect. We will speak about glutamate monoamine interactions. And we speak again about mechanism of glutamate and monoamine interactions. The first GABA drug, acting drug, it was cyclophyxyl pyridine, or more known, I think you're more familiar with the name of PCP. PCP is an NMDA receptor antagonist. It blocks glutamatergic, ionotropic glutamatergic receptors. Somebody called Arthur Kotz discovered it, synthesized this drug in 1926. In 1956, it was approved an anesthetic, but it was disapproved. First, it was disapproved for medical use in 65, and in 78, this drug was totally prohibited because it's because this drug is hallucinogen, and it's very it used to be one of the most used hallucinogens, and the peak of recreational use of this drug was in the 70s. Keep the good to prevent the evil. Ketamine was synthesized in 1962. Ketamine is much better than anesthetic and much less efficient as hallucinogen. It has very sporadic, I think it's hallucinogenic use, it's recreational use in Europe, in the West, almost not known, very rare. But it has pretty common recreational use in East Asia, in Taiwan, especially Korea, Hong Kong, Macau. It's called meow meow meow. But it's very dangerous. Recreational use of this drug is very dangerous, not because of the brain effect, what is in there, not because of the addiction or overdose risk. It's dangerous. It has a very bad side effects on the urinary system, on the bladder, on urinary bladder. After prolonged use, it can even create results in gangrene of bladder, and especially it's dangerous in young women and some young female recreational users of ketamine end up with the urinary bladders get removed. I mean, as I told, it's antagonist, it's not allosteric modulator, it's totally block calcium, it totally block NMDA channels. And what about ketamine in depression? It was in early 2000s. Ketamine was tried to treat depression, and the results were amazing. Not only it was effective antidepressant, it was extremely fast-acting antidepressants. You see, this is a study of Zarat and colleagues from 2006. I had to bring the same slide for citalopram. With citalopram, we see first effects after 2 weeks. With we see effects after 2 hours. And after 2 or 3 days, the effect become very potent. But the problem, the effect is short-lasting, and it start to diminish after 1 week. It's very fast-acting antidepressants, but unfortunately, there is a problem with to achieve the long-lasting effect, and you need to repeat infusion. Sorry, it's Hamilton depression scores.
So it's like something.
It's mixed of self-report and physician impression.
So how do they know it's not higher?
Higher. Well, you first make infusion. After patient wake up and stabilize, you fill the questionnaire. In questionnaire, you have also apparent sadness. If you see the person seems saddened to you, or you ask him, do you feel sad? Do you feel sad or not? So we have reported sadness and appeared sadness. I never did Hamilton scores, yes. No, they receive daily doses, yes. And in 2012, what was first basic study with ketamine and depression was it was published in Nature. They were very likely to publish in Nature, so you need to be very likely, you need to work on the right drug on the right time. It was time of the top attention to ketamine, and they succeed to publish, but indeed it's a very good study. And they found that ketamine has antidepressants-like effect measured by mobility in the forced swim test. And what they also found that this effect is like with antidepressant drugs, is linked with BDNF. It's increased not only ketamine, MK801, it's another antagonist of NMDA receptors. After 30 minutes, it's already increasing expression of BDNF protein. And after 30 minutes, they immediately have an effect on the other depressive-like behavior. And the effect on depressive-like behavior is linked with BDNF, because in BDNF knockout mice, it was no antidepressant-like effect of ketamine. Ketamine is also like citalopram. What we saw, it also have two optical enantiomers. It have S-ketamine and R-ketamine. Both of them, and S-ketamine is 5 times more active, more its affinity to NMDA receptors 5 times higher. But R-ketamine also have lesser, but it's also active. And now attention is focused on S-ketamine, and Johnson and Johnson, they started to sell S-ketamine spray to treat depression for nasal administration. It's quickly inhaled to the nostrils, and it's claimed to have antidepressant-like effect, antidepressant effects. I try to contact Johnson & Johnson to try it in animals, what is the mechanism of this nasal effect. But unfortunately, till now, they did not agree to provide me with the compound. Sometimes it's very hard. Sometimes, unfortunately, the pharmaceutical company don't want to know the whole truth about me. If it works, it's good. We don't need any much. And I'm very enthusiastic about this development. I think it's the first drug so far, first CNS drug used in nasal administration, because I myself also worked on nasal pathway for the treatment. Our olfactory system is we will speak about it in the last classes, and we will speak about growth factors. But what I have to mention that our olfactory system is very closely connected with the limbic system and with the serotonergic system. And our nose, our olfactory epithelium, it's actually open gateway, it's open pathway to the brain, deep to the brain. And it's definitely should be used, and I believe it will be used for the to deliver the pharmaceutical substances, and this S-ketamine is one of the examples, is a beginning of this process. S-ketamine, nasal S-ketamine, unlike infusion of ketamine, it does not require day hospitalization. One of the limitations of ketamine treatment, it's like electroconvulsive therapy. It requires day hospitalization, ishpuz. Patients should to be admitted to the medical facility and to stay for a few hours. And S-ketamine doesn't require it. Another development, R-ketamine, which I told, which is less effective as an anesthetic. Maybe it will be same good as antidepressant, and it will be actually good. We will get drug which does not make you dizzy, which will not be sedative, but will be good antidepressant. Also, they have now works on R-ketamine. And what do you think? Does the antidepressant effect of ketamine involve monoamines? We could say that not necessary, because we know that we saw from this Nature paper that ketamine effect is linked with BDNF, and we know that BDNF signaling is closely connected with the NMDA receptor signaling. So it may be that theoretically ketamine can act via BDNF mediated pathway without touching monoamines. But maybe still, you know what this is food. It's very cool. This is province of Canada, which called Quebec. Quebec is one of the biggest provinces of Canada, and it's the only French-speaking province of Canada. And they have very popular street food, fast foods are called poutine. It's nothing to do with Russian dictator, but I will not, but still I will not market it in Ukraine today. And poutine, every poutine consists French fries with cheese. It's always, it's like base, it's like base of poutine. It's not very healthy, I have to say. But for Quebec, it's like falafel or shawarma. For Israel, it's national fast food. But in addition to French fries and cheese, you can put everything you wish or you don't wish. You can put seafood, bacon, chicken, beef, whatever. Every sausages, everything can go inside of the poutine. And they have very common expression, Quebecers. The best way to try poutine is to eat it. If you want to know how this poutine is good, you need to eat it. It's the best way to know. And Pierre Blier, he's my postdoctoral supervisor. He's a Quebecer. He uses Quebecer attitude to ketamine. And we can always think, does it involve monoamine? So it does not involve monoamines, but we can just try it, like poutine, and to get the answer. This is the first study. They checked effect of ketamine on serotonin, noradrenaline, and dopamine neurons. What they found that on serotonergic neurons, no single administration of ketamine, no repeated administration of ketamine didn't have any effect, also not on the burst activity. Noradrenaline system, we start to see something interesting. Single administration did not have any effect. Repeated administration increased the firing rate of when you during one day to perform repeated administration of ketamine, at the end you get increased activity of noradrenergic neurons. But after 3 days, you stop to see this effect. With the burst activity, everybody remember what does it mean, burst activity. We don't have any effect. And these are effect of non-dopamine system. On dopamine system, we don't have any effects on after single administration or after repeated administration on the firing rate. But after repeated administration, we have effect on the burst activity, again, after 1 and 3 days, but not after 7 days. It's a little bit resembles a clinical study when the peak of the effect of ketamine was on the 3rd day, and after 7 days, it was decline in the clinical response. Blee and colleagues, they also checked effect of ketamine not only in normal rats, but also in animal model of depression. This animal model of depression provided by Charles River, they called Wister Kyoto rats. They were first, this breed of rats were bred in Kyoto University in Japan. And they have behavior and neurochemical characteristics which resemble depression. Namely, they have immobility during the for swim test, and they have increased reactivity of HPA axis. They have much more stronger response by stress hormones to the stressors. And Blier and colleagues, they checked effect of ketamine on monoaminergic systems in Kyoto rats, and they found something very interesting. It had stop-passing effect on serotonin firing activity in Kyoto rats, which was pretty unexpected. It's opposite. It's not in normal rats. We didn't have any effect. It also have suppressing effect of burst activity of noradrenergic neurons, vice versa from the normal rats, so-called non-depressed rats. And only with dopamine system, the effect was similar. It did not similar, but in the same direction. It was no effect on the firing rate. It was no effect on burst activity, but it was effect on the density, on how much continuously active neurons you found per electrode descent per animal. What is very, very interesting, it was no effect. Primary, this drug is primary acting on NMDA on glutamate system, but after a few hours, when electrophysiological experiment were made, it was already no effect on pyramidal neuron, on glutamate neurons of prefrontal cortex. We still don't know how exactly, what I believe based on these results, that maybe immediate effect of NMDA, of ketamine, might be directly mediated by NMDA receptors, but to get some prolonged effect, chronic effect, you probably still do need serotonergic, not serotonergic, mostly catecholaminergic neurons and mostly dopaminergic neurons. And in the next classes, we will learn how these neurons, how growth factors and how BDNF and monoamines, how they potentiate each another. I think we can finish on this point. I will be glad to answer your questions, if any.
I understand how ketamine affects serotonin system.
Well, to be honest, no one, don't worry, no one understands still. But glutamate, there are glutamatergic pathways, vitatory glutamatergic inputs to the VTA, to the locus ceruleus, and to the dorsal raphe nucleus. How you get disinhibit, but if you inhibit it, you're supposed to get decrease. How you get increase? Probably if we go deep, analyze this, this article I forget to upload, I will upload it. Probably if we go deep and analyze this, probably disinhibition and disexcitations, we can figure out theoretical pathways, can be topic for the work if somebody wants to do it. But again, if you choose it as a topic for the coursework, then you need to suggest how would you check it. Any questions from the Zoom?